This is June 8th, 1988, Newton Free Library. Regina Clifton interviewing Marion Jackson. Mrs. Jackson, you're Miss Jackson. You have lived in Newton for how long?
All my life. Wonderful. Yeah, really boy. I was born in Needham. No, I was born there because I was born in my grandmother's home. And so my mother was living in Newtonville at the time. And she went up there to have me. Dr. Frank Clark, the baby doctor in Newton for 50 or more years, I guess, was the doctor that delivered me. I think he probably could lay claim to a good percentage of Newton's babies.
I think I've heard him mention before. What was the first place that you lived in Newton? What address was it?
Well, the first address that I remember vividly was 138 Charles Bank Road.
And that's right over there on the other side of the turnpike now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How would you describe that particular area when you were born? Were there a lot of houses?
Very ethnic neighborhood. We had English, Irish, Italian, a very mixed neighborhood, very friendly neighborhood.
And did everybody end up going to the same elementary school?
Yeah, we all went to Underwood from that area.
And that's right in back of us here in the library?
Yes,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What did that cover? Grades 1 through 6 or kindergarten as well?
No, I think it was first grade. I think they had kindergarten. Started first grade, went through, I think I started in the 6th grade up at Bigelow so long ago, I can't remember.
So it must have been 1 to 5.
Something like that.
And so all the neighborhood kids went together?
Yeah.
What type of activities in the area? Were there more play spaces? I think you alluded to a dump a while back.
In back of Charles Bank Road, between Nonanum Place and Charles Bank Road, there used to be a brook. I think it was an extension of a brook that was in Newtonville. And it came down and emptied into the Charles River. And I guess for some reason, they decided they weren't going to close it off. So they were using it for landfill to fill it in, and they would come and dump. I don't suppose it wasn't garbage type dump. It was dump like paper and cans or things like that, and to fill that whole area up, to level it off so that people all had level backyards instead of going down into this kind of a gully affair there.
And did it smell before they started peeling it?
No, I can't remember any odor of it coming from it. I think they were very careful what they put in there.
And so that sort of augmented people's backyards?
Yeah, it built up there.
So did they eventually build on that area?
No, those houses were already built there. And it just made the land level between Charles Bank Road, Nonantum Place, and Jefferson Street. So it just leveled off.
And
all
it made more play space for kids.
Yeah, actually people had bigger backyards.
I suppose the kids played a lot outside.
Yeah, we did. We played a lot. We played in the street because there were that many cars going up and down. And we did. We played in backyards and played up at the Burr Playground.
Which is located where?
Up near the Bigelow School.
Oh, good, good. So that was sort of the gathering spot, and it was easier to get over before the turnpike.
Oh, yes.
Straight over.
There was no problems in that area.
So you think it was perhaps easier for youngsters in more open areas back then?
Oh, I think it was, I really do.
It's interesting. You said some funny things had happened at the dump, like caught
Well,
fireworks.
the boys would throw firecrackers down on 4th of July, but they could throw them high enough and far enough, they'd go off in the air. So my neighbor, the girl that lived across the street, she and I chummed. We were I guess we must have been about 9 or 10. We thought we'd try it. Well, unfortunately, we couldn't throw high enough or far enough, and firecrackers went down and set the dump on fire. Well, it had been on fire so many times for one reason or another that the firemen had just announced through the police department the next time anybody was caught, setting it on fire, there was going to be a lot of trouble. Well, we were two frightened little girls, believe me, and her house backed onto this dump area, so we rushed into her mother, and her poor mother filled up all these pots of water, and the three of us ran back and forth down they're dumping water down, and we finally got it out before we had to call the fire department.
Bravo.
That certainly scared the daylights out of us that day.
Gee, imagine having the luxury of a large space like that to play in. What did you do much with boating on the Charles?
No. I didn't. We were not a boating family, although,
there were facilities
there.
there.
Somewhat. They were not anything like they are now. But at that time, you could swim in the Charles River down in this part of it.
Did you do that?
A couple of times I did.
Were there beach areas off the Newton side?
There were, further down there was an area in which you could go in swimming.
Like near Daly Field is now, or is that far down? Or?
No, down. I think it was somewhat down near the where that skating rink is. It seems to me. I may be wrong. It's very.
Well,
dim.
I can remember swimming in the Charles off Mass General Hospital.
Yeah.
At the bridge, the Salt and Pepper Bridge.
Yeah.
It was probably during the war, and then of course the polio craze came.
Yeah, I know.
We were afraid of everything, and magically overnight pools appeared to discourage people.
I know, for swimming in the river.
Yeah, they had to do something because otherwise people would. So I think there was a commemorative swim in the Charles further upstream.
Yes, there is up in the Auburndale area. I think they do it every year because they really worked hard to get that area of the river cleaned up, and they do feel it is safe to swim in. And I don't know how, down further on in the Watertown area, whether that's true or not now.
Well, I remember 1960s. There was that manufacturing right at the Watertown Bridge.
Yeah, the Wandos.
And I remember funny things being in the water.
They used to empty things into the water.
Yeah.
The biggest beach along the river was the one over in Cambridge called Magazine Beach.
Yeah, that has its pool. Yeah.
But that was a big beach on the river then.
I remember that. Yeah. That's all filled in, I think, as a UMass extension.
Yeah, probably.
Now, another thing I remember getting an inquiry about was the great canoe race. They hold one of those now in the
they
start.
do. Yeah, they do.
That it's interesting. Now I've heard that the crew racers from Harvard come up as far as Watertown Bridge.
Yeah, they come up that far. Yeah.
Do you recall them doing that?
Oh yes.
In your days?
Yeah.
So that was always their stretch of.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that part with the Watertown, the bridge, and that general area looks about the same as
It looks. Oh yeah, that looks about the same. There's really not any great change, particularly looking from the Newton side over to the Watertown side. The big change on the Newton side was putting the turnpike in, but that along that area it just ran adjacent to the railroad track. And,
so it wasn't too disruptive to your part of the corner when it came in?
Well, by that time we had moved, and we were living in another part of we were living up in Church Street. Over here, yeah.
But you always kept within this
general area, yeah.
Interesting. Now, when you were going to school, everybody from the neighborhood went to the same elementary school?
With the exception of some of the children that went to the Catholic school. But you either went to Our Lady's
up here
on Washington Street, or you went to Underwood.
Okay, and then you all went together to the same junior high.
We went to Bigelow,
That was adjacent. Now, when it came to high school, it was the same.
When it came to high school, we were the last freshman class at Newton High, the year of 1930. we graduated in 34. 1930 was the last year that Newton High had a regular freshman class. After that, they went into the junior highs where you had one more year, and then only 3 years at the high school, which they still do.
So that was a 7, 8, 9 program at the junior high?
Yeah, after 1930.
Okay, but now aren't they back to the 4-year system? I
don't
believe they
know,
are.
I knew they were trying to get back to it, but I didn't know whether they had achieved it or not.
Yeah, I think that probably happened in the late 60s, early 70s. Now, as far as your high school days, did you meet kids from all over?
Oh yeah, the classes were made up from all different schools. We were pretty well spread out.
How many junior highs at that time fed into the high school?
Oh, I honestly don't know. I really don't know.
We've got about 85,000 population now. It must have been smaller then.
Well, yeah. Well, at one time it was even up in the 90,000, so, it probably was smaller than 85,000 at that time. I have no idea how many junior highs were involved in the area. There would have been at least one from each village, and possibly 2 from some. So
that gives us 9 at least.
Yeah.
How did you characterize educational experience in high school? Good teachers?
It was good.
And were there like a commercial track and a college preparatory track?
Yes, they had.
Do you think that was about evenly balanced?
Oh, I think it was. Yeah, it really was.
Do you think perhaps education then was taken more seriously by high school students?
Well, I think we didn't have the outside activities that so many of them have now. They had outside activities and drama club and speakers club and different things like that. And they had dances in the daytime after school for students that wanted to have a social life. But because computers were an unheard of thing, and a lot of the activities they have now in the school was no one ever even thought they were in existence in those days.
There was always sports and music.
Oh yes, sports and music.
How about after school work? Now,
well,
you're edging into the depression.
Yes,
then.
Yes, you were.
Now,
and I did my share of babysitting.
Bravo. And did everybody else scratch around?
Most of the girls that I grew up with did. They did babysitting. Saturdays when we got to be 16, we were able to work in that W. Woolworth company. Friday nights and all day Saturdays.
Were there enough of them around to take care of you all job seekers?
Oh, well, because you see, there was people that lived up in what we call the Honeywell Hill section were financially much better off than the people that lived in the Charles Bank Road, Nonandum, and that area side of Newton section. So a lot of those people didn't have to go out and earn money, but I did. I went babysat, and as I say, I worked in the 5 and 10.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
No, I was an only child.
That always delves to the only child. I need to help out.
Yeah. And
well, when you were in high school, when you were planning for work plans ahead, what happened after high school?
Well, I went to work at that because I was in a depression at the time. My mother was working with Backrack Photographic Studios. So I went in there and learned how to be a photographic retoucher.
Was that Boylston Street in town?
No, that's right down here on the old Stanley Steamer building. Yeah.
Oh, when do you recall when they went out of business?
No, but I recall riding in a Stanley Steamer with a little friend of mine who was sort of she was sort of semi-adopted by the Stanleys. She lived in a house quite near the building down there, and her name was, I don't know if I should say her name was Bobby Hughes, and they got to talking to her, and they, you know, they didn't really adopt her, but they would take her for rides. So I was playing with her one day, and we were visiting people in the next house. So I got to ride in the Stanley steamer when I was very young, but I mean, I didn't. Just the idea of riding in the car was was a big thrill.
Oh, wonderful.
So that and then as I say, after high school, it was impossible to find a job in any kind of office work. So through my mother, I went in there and I learned to be a photographic retoucher, and I did that for close to 15 years there.
Baccarat has such a name.
I know it, yeah.
So you can imagine each one of those items.
And we worked on piecework basis, so you worked very hard because you wanted to, have a fairly decent paycheck at the end of the week. The particular department I was in was on a piecework basis.
Particularly.
And then when I got a little tired of that, I went back and took a night course, brush-up course in typing and shorthand. And
night school? Or?
No, I went into Boston. I can't remember the name of the school I went
Brian
to.
Stratton or Hickox or one of those?
No, it was a small school, and it didn't last very long, I remember.
But that was enough to get you brushed up?
Yes, enough to get me brushed up. Yeah.
And then what did you do?
Well, then I took a position with a man that published an investment bulletin in Newton Center. His last name was Drew, and I worked there for about 2 or 3 years, and then I had a chance to go into Fairfield and Ellis, a general insurance agency, and I was there for 26 and a half years. So
that was in town?
And that was in town, yeah. So that's where I retired from.
Was that railroad service,
no.
Or did you have to take the bus or trolley?
Oh, no, for most of the time we could use the train. Then when they built the toll road through, because we couldn't use, they took the train off from Newton Corner. They just canceled out that station, and so I used to have to take the streetcar in. And then when I moved to Newtonville, then I went back to using the train.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's the last stop on the train.
That's right.
Now, all during the years of raising you, your mother had to work.
My mother had to work because my parents were divorced when I was very young.
And did she finish up at Baccarat?
Yes, she did. She worked there for it was over 50 years.
It must have been a certain type of satisfaction. Be artistic, but yet you had to be practically the assembly line.
That's true, yeah.
Other people have mentioned that Baccarat place. How would you characterize, perhaps, as far as neighborhood activities, how would you characterize, let's say when you were growing up, were there neighborhood improvement groups or?
Not that I can remember. Everybody took a great deal of pride in their own property. Anyone that didn't, I think that pretty much the neighbors let them know that they weren't too happy with them. I do remember that we had foot patrolmen, and you were always a little in awe of the policemen coming around, walking up the sidewalk, and so you sort of were on your best behavior when you were out in the street. I mean, I can't remember, the boys hung around the corner. They always have hung around the corner. But I can't remember that, there was no such thing as drugs and anything like that. So any trouble that they got into was just really minor things compared to what happens today.
Now, when something big approached Newton, like the planning of the turnpike, do you remember what type of reaction it got from maybe people more closely about it?
It was tremendous upheaval in this area, or in any area, but particularly in this area, because it was cutting right through the business section, and so we ended up, as you can see, practically cut in half. And it really did. It really did a job on Newton Corner.
Well, we get some of the stores.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember in 1960 taking the trolley down. I remember great deal more
Yes.
being here.
Oh, yeah. We had the bank, the big bank building and where the Gateway Center is now, but then you could ride right around the bank. You weren't, cut off at all.
And then the movie theater building,
And the
of course,
movie
was
theater,
still that
yeah,
whole
that was
building.
still there.
That was there, still in
Well, that wasn't torn down until they built this
82.
new, yeah,
It's still
still no building. Years and years ago, around the corner, down at the corner of Pearl Street, and before this theater was built, there was an old opera house down there.
Oh.
They used for a movie theater, and then that was torn down.
When do you think? During the Depression?
I think it was somewhere in that area, and then I think then the A&P went in there and built a store. They built the first store that was built there, first building that was built there. They were there for a good many years.
Everything was quite convenient.
Oh, it was very convenient. Yeah, we had the big 5 and 10. Originally was over in that new building between that's from Charles Bank Road around Jefferson Street. The 5 and 10 was located in that building, and up above the YWCA had space along with apartments that were up there too. But the YW had a area on the top floor, and we used to go up there and put on plays and play basketball and just have generally fun times up there.
Well, the YM has been over here for quite a while.
Oh, that's been over as far as back as I can remember. That's been there.
I thought that was one of the older ones.
Yeah, it
but
is.
The YW had their own. Oh, that's
They just had a space in that particular
but
building.
still, programs were offered
yes,
here to young women.
Oh, yes, they were. Yeah.
Wow.
No.
That's interesting. So there are a lot of neighborhood things that
And
you
the
could-
post office used to be in that area of that block too.
Not this Newtown
No.
little one, but there was one right here.
Right there in that new building.
Yeah.
In that area, yeah, where the 5 and 10
It was
was
called
supposed
Newton Corner Post
Yeah,
Office? That's
Newton
another thing
Post
that's
Office.
lost.
Yeah, Waldorf was around the corner there.
The Waldorfs.
Yeah.
Some was coming back, so
Yeah.
everything you could possibly
Oh
want.
yes,
is
you
here.
could shop pretty well. We had Pack Snow's. Before it was Pack Snow's store, it was Blankenship's, and he was a local man that had that, and you could buy anything you wanted in the way of clothing there. And we had Green Stationery Store was here, and they had restaurants, and they had a tea shop down. Well, it's kind of hard to describe where it was because the turnpike cut right through there. It was on the block this side of where the drugstore is down there, and there was an H.P. Hood store there. It was very convenient, and we had Forsyth's Meat Market. We had another meat market up near the theater. Can't think of the name of that one at the moment.
Well, you had a lot of
There was a
choices.
lot of places here. Newton Corner was a very active.
Yeah, the
business.
congregations in the various church buildings
Yeah.
have changed some.
They have changed somewhat, I think. Yeah.
Which
'Cause
one was were you
on the Methodist Church?
This
and that's
one right
the
up here?
one up here on. As you're going up Center Street, has the round dome on the top.
Dome, yeah.
Yeah.
And now a new congregation has moved in there.
Yeah, that's
That's the
was a
Ashokas.
Buddhist, just
Yeah, yeah.
similar to
It's funny, I
Buddhist.
got an inquiry.
Yeah.
I heard, I did a little research on that, and there was a modest building in 1890s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Ralph Adams Cram
Yeah.
was, so that must have come in about 1900,
Well,
1910.
my understanding is on that was that he gave a great deal of money toward building this present building, but with strings attached. he had been traveling through Italy, and he had seen a great many of the Italian buildings with that type of dome top, and that's what he wanted for the church. And so in order to get the money, they had to agree to have that type of building, which was fine, but over the years it proved to be a very expensive upkeep to the inside of that building.
The dome being
the way it was.
Well, on the other corner, the other church was H.H. Richardson Church.
Yeah,
so
the Elliott or the Baptist.
I think the Baptist.
The Baptist is on the same side as the Methodist was. That's on the corner of Church Street and Center, but on the same side that the Methodist was on.
Yeah, when you were attending Methodist services, there was a full congregation.
Oh, yes, yeah. We had a big congregation there.
And then how did it become sold to the Buddhists?
Well, back in the middle 1960s, by that time the congregation had shrunk considerably, because when the young men come back from the service in 1942 and they married, there were no areas in this part of Newton in which to buy or build smaller homes. And by that time they were developing out, native Framingham, Wayland, Sudbury, and small new homes were attractive financially as well as, able upkeep and so forth. So a lot of the young people in the church just moved out of the city of Newton and left it with a congregation of older people who were rapidly dying off. So we then decided to merge with the Newtonville Methodist Church.
Yeah.
And we merged then it was about the middle 1960s.
And then the building was held so that they were hoping for a new congregation, or somebody to take it off their hands? Or?
At that time it was bought, when we left the building here, it was bought by the muscular dystrophy. One of those associations bought the building. The land that was next to it did not. The parsonages, the house is directly in back of the church on Wesley Street, and then the empty lot of land that was next to that parsonage is now an apartment house there, and then that same apartment house is out there. That corner lot there, John T. Burns' sister lived there, and then when she died, they sold that property, so that when the church wanted to buy it at the time, but they couldn't afford to for parking, because we had to park on the street. It really wasn't convenient. And so as I say, by the middle 1960s, it was a pretty small congregation, and it really they were hard put to really keep the building up, and so they had a chance to sell it, and they decided they would merge and sell the building.
So the Newtonville Methodist Church, does that draw from a pretty good
Not now.
percentage of Newton? I mean, are there other Methodist churches?
Well, there's only one other Methodist church now, the First Methodist, which is a very old building up in Newton Upper Falls. It's a historical part of the historical section there. And that was very well endowed over the years, and it has a very small congregation, but they have money to keep it going. What happens when the congregation really dies out, I don't know. But Newtonville, the United Methodist Church of Newton now is made up of a church that was one that was in Newton Highlands, Newton Center, Newton Corner, and then Newtonville. And they have merged together over the years. And then they sold the big building and bought the school department building further up there on Walnut Street, and converted that into a much smaller church.
Easier to keep up.
And
you see all these palatial buildings
I know
around, and you wonder about the history of them.
I remember when the Elliott Church, the original church, burned.
That was when?
Back in the late 50s.
Okay, and
As
then
that went up. And then they built this new building. And they met with us in the Methodist church for quite a few Sundays, and until they got going on what they wanted to do.
because when a newcomer comes to this immediate area and looks in this area behind and realizes this wealth of church buildings.
I know it, but they're
Must
all
have
having hard time to keep going. That's for sure. You see, there's no young people move into this area, or if they do, they're transient. They're here while they're going to school, or on a job that's not going to last more than 2 or 3 years, so they don't put down permanent roots.
And then, well, sometimes people don't think about being regular churchgoers until they have children of their own.
That's true, right?
And
That's
so
true.
it takes a while to sit and then plan a family and then.
Yeah, and then decide which church you want to affiliate with.
Yeah, it does seem though as if Newton Corner can still be a magnet for the more residential areas up the road.
Yeah.
But how do you think quality of life has been affected? You said that actually once the turnpike came in, it was easier to drive in town.
Oh, yes, much easier, but, to get in well, it wasn't so easy for the people from Newton Corner, because they still were reduced to using the streetcar until they put the express buses on, and I don't recall just how long those have been on now.
I use them myself.
Yeah, and so that changed a lot for the people in Newton Corner. That was a big help, but it was a very drastic change from riding on the train to taking those old streetcars into Boston. And a lot of people were very unhappy over that. In some ways, I really think the turnpike has hurt the quality of life in this area of Newton. I really do. The very fact that it just simply cut it right in half, and the shopping area and the business area, and it just didn't induce new companies to come in here and open up. And people that wanted to use facilities on the other side had hard work getting across the street. I believe that at the time the turnpike was planned, and Mr. Callahan was head of it, it was a gentleman's agreement that there was to be a walk-over bridge from this side of Newton to the other Washington Street side, and unfortunately he died, and that was never carried out.
Would it be more pedestrian-only type?
It would have been a pedestrian-only type of thing, whereas as it is now, you've got to scramble across from here to the hotel, and then, but it's better on the other side since they put those extra lights in over
and
there.
The little islands.
You do have to, hang on here quite a few minutes sometimes waiting for the light to change.
We're talking about people who may not walk so fast.
That's right, and a lot of people just don't want to walk over there in the same way they don't want to walk from that side over here to use the library, and so it has made a big difference in the city.
The way they tried to sink the highway, though, I was thinking maybe that we get more exhaust.
Oh, I'm sure we do. Yeah, I'm sure we do. Particularly with those big trucks going through. Because maybe it won't be so bad now that the government is cracking down on emissions controls and what have you, so that it's going to be better as time goes on. But when it first opened up, there was no such thing as emission controls, and I'm sure that the air was very badly polluted.
What do you think you'd like to see for Newton Corner in the future?
Well, it very obviously is becoming an area of apartments.
Yeah.
Either buildings or in houses that have been converted to apartments. And those don't lend themselves to bringing young families in with children. And I think the life of any community is you're younger families that are going to come in and stay and, have their children go through the school system. And but unfortunately, I'm afraid that isn't going to happen. And the very fact that they had to close the Bigelow School shows that. And that's been difficult for a lot of people to live up in that area, to get their children over to Day Junior High up there on Walnut Street in Newtonville to go to school.
That's the next one.
Yeah. So, I mean, it means school buses or somebody in the family transporting them. I would like to see Newton becoming a thriving center again as it was before the Turnpike went through, but I really can't see how that can be accomplished. And I know when they first talked about this, tearing down the old buildings and putting up these new buildings, and it was supposed all these stores were going to be in here, like the ones on Newbury Street. The displays that they had showing it, and the architectural drawings they had. And they had them named like Bonwood Tellers, and all those stores supposedly were going to have shops out here. Well, it's not an area that like the Chestnut Hill area, money-wise. And I suppose as time went on and they did some surveying, they realized that this was a blue-collar neighborhood rather than a white-collar neighborhood. Although there are sections of Newton Corner that definitely are white-collar, but I think the greater majority of the area of Newton Corner would be considered blue-collar. And so those shops just wouldn't have, I don't think, would have survived here anyway.
Well, they paid money to figure that out before they invested.
I'm sure they did, because it's proved it with some of the places that have come in already and gone out. And I don't think we really needed another office building. I think, if anything, we needed some more housing here for people. That whole block across the street there, that second building they built, had been entirely apartments. I think they would have been overflowing with people
who wanted to
stay in this area because it's convenient to transportation, particularly if they worked in Boston, and but to put another office building in, and I understand there's a lot of area not rented. And even with the one here, if it wasn't for Canvas Publishing in that building, I'm sure that would be in trouble. And you see, they displaced a lot of people when they took those buildings down. True, they were very old. They were nice buildings when I was small. I can remember my grandmother taking me to visit somebody up there, and I was fascinated. These long flight of stairs to go up, great big rooms with high ceilings, but they were beautiful apartments, great big kitchens, and they had nice back porches out there. And it was just unfortunate the owners that bought them just decided to use them, I guess, as a tax loss, and they just let them go right down the hill, and they got, bad reputation, and they were so ill-kept, and it was too bad. And if they could have replaced those with some nice apartments, I think they would have been really doing something for Newton Corner.
Oh, of course, I've heard that block described before. It was a rather colorful place.
Yes,
It seems, for outside looking at it, it's like the ideal location.
Yes,
It's, well, the main library has always been here in Newton Corner, and you know that there are plans coming for the new building at Newton Center. What do you think?
I'm looking forward to the new library. I hope that they will keep a branch here at Newton Corner. I was hoping that they would use the children's library as a branch library, because that's about as easily accessible as this building is, pretty much to the corner. And not to have any kind of a library down in this area would be terrible. That would be a terrible loss to this part of the community. But I'm looking forward to the new library. I think it's long overdue. I think that it would have been nice maybe if it could have been down in this area, but then that would have been not a generally accessible location for everybody in the city, but I think the spot they picked will be good. And you can get there by bus if you have to, if you don't have a car, and so I think it will be nice.
We're looking forward to it, but I know there's mixed opinions.
Oh yeah, there's mixed opinions, yeah.
Losing the main library.
Yes, yeah. But it should, as I say, if we have a branch library down here, if they're able to keep the branches intact, and that's up to the people themselves if that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. If they're going to be willing to use their branch libraries. It's amazing to me how many people never step foot inside of a library. I can't believe it when I meet people my age. Oh, I never go to the library, and I just sort of blink my eyes and think, well, don't they know what they're missing?
Well, it comes to being accustomed.
Yeah, that's true. I think that because going back to my early school days, we didn't have library classes. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I do on Monday. I volunteer up at the ward school in the library. I help Nancy Brown, a librarian. And so those youngsters get a half an hour each week exposed to the library. They get a story, and then they get to choose books, and they keep them for a week and bring them back the next week. And as they get older, they're taught how to use the reference cards and how to look things up in the reference books. So they get a good grounding in what a library means. And I think those youngsters, majority of them, seem to have cards for the children's library. There's a few that just are never going to be readers. You know, they'll pick out an easy book. They might be in the 4th grade, but they'll pick out a book for a kindergartner or a 1st grade because it's got a lot of pictures in it. And that's so they never will be readers, and that's understandable.
But they know where the facilities are.
Right.
I'll get them later on.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been here since elementary school.
Yeah.
But they know where to come.
That's
if
right.
They need
if they need the information. So I think that's probably why there are so many people today in their 60s and 70s that never use the library because they were never taught how to use the library. Mm-hmm. And that's what these youngsters today are being taught, how to use the library, and exposed to all different kinds of books and things. They're you know, once in a while a youngster will get into a book that when they bring it to me to be checked out, I know immediately it's way beyond them. Yeah. And so we
life is for stretching.
Yeah, and well, you know, when the 1st grader picks up something that's definitely a 6th or 7th grade, he can't even say the title of the book. So that I just call Mrs. Brown over, and she sits down and discusses it with them and points out the things that they might not understand. And they're quite willing to have it go back on the shelf and pick a book they can read and really enjoy. But she's an exceptional person anyway with the children, and she's has a way of being able to get through to them on books.
It's important, as you said, early exposure.
So I think that makes a big difference on how people view the library is how much they've used it over the years. And I don't think a lot of people realize what a tremendous resource the library has, other than just books.
It's funny, over the years, libraries tried different things to be of use to the community, and depending on the times, are very, very.
No, I have a friend, and we've enjoyed the book reviews. We've missed very few of them in the last since we've both been retired, and we go to the slideshow up there at Water, and we enjoyed that very much. And so we've tried to take advantage of different things that they've had.
I know there are a lot of walkers who come to the Wednesday night movie here.
Yes.
The facilities aren't top notch.
I know it.
The film selection is very good.
Oh, it's very good. I know.
People
I've been
look forward
here.
to it.
Yeah, it's true.
And of course, when we have
that will be another thing. I'm sure will be a much better arrangement for films, and perhaps more people would be able to come and enjoy them.
Yeah, because that's an aspect there. But location-wise, it's good that the library tucked over here in the corner of Newton still had the attraction.
That's true.
Yeah. Right. Just going back, back to the Depression. And you came out of school in '34.
Yeah.
Well, that's the time. What type of things did your classmates end up doing?
Well, I think some of the boys from this area got into construction work, one type or another. Girls got clerical jobs if they could, or store clerking jobs if they could. You just about took anything you could get to do, unless you were fortunate enough to have a family that's income could keep you going and give you a college education. Quite a lot of them were able to go to college.
A certain percentage of Newton's high school graduating class always did.
Yeah. And the class of '34 had over 500 graduates. And when we had the reunion in 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It would be 1984 when 34, 50.
Yeah.
In '84 we had the reunion up at in the Marion, and I think we had about over 200 people attended, and they found over 350 of the graduates. They found about 100 had died, and
the World War II got some.
yes, there were several from this area, from this big old school that died in the Second World War.
But that was a great turnout for the 50th.
It was a good turnout. Yeah, it was a noontime. They had a lunch. They decided that it would be more people would be interested in a lunch than a dinner and dance at night, and so they did. But I guess they're planning another one now to come up for the 55th year. I don't know how well they'll do on that, but
well, the organizers must have thought it very successful to travel. Yeah. And would most of them end up being in the area still, or do they travel to this?
No, it's quite a few came from California. In California and New Mexico and Colorado, New York and Connecticut and Rhode Island. There were quite a few areas that were represented. In fact, as I understand it, in California, in one area out there's quite a few people that come from the Newton school system out there, and they've sort of all kept in touch with one another.
Northern California or Southern?
I don't really know which part of California it is.
I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's in California.
I know it. And so that they're looking forward to that 55th year. Whether they'll combine it with another class, like some of the
50th reunion will be a feature of maybe those 30s classes, or do you think people went straight out to work and had a
that was the first reunion that class had had.
Oh, they didn't have a 25th.
They didn't have the 25th or anything like that. That was the first reunion that the class of '34 had.
Well, I suppose when it comes to anybody's 50th reunion, really the curiosity is really up.
Yeah, that's true.
I was just thinking when it comes time for a class in the 40s to have their reunion, they're going to really, turn up to that.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe people have a little camaraderie heading off their 30s together. I don't know. Well, they certainly did range far afield.
Yes, they did. They really did.
Are there any members of your family attending Newton schools now?
No, my family, I'm it.
Oh, okay.
As far as family, because I had no brothers and sisters, and I did not marry, so in fact, that's it. And my mother only had one sister, and she never had any family, and that was, my grandmother came from a large family. My grandfather did, but that was, didn't end up down in our part of the family.
So you have a pretty clear perspective from your point of view. Sometimes, I've heard other things from other people about comparison with schools or not.
Yeah.
But you have a unique view in that you volunteer in a
Yes,
school.
yeah, I do.
That's good. Do you think those kids are as bright and responsive as you were in elementary school?
I think they're brighter, more responsive. I really do. I think, with the advent of TV and the outside activities, I really think they appear to be pretty bright youngsters.
Do you think that's growing up in Newton, which is, well, comparatively a very good city to grow up in?
It is, and I think their school system is a very superior system. Because I can't judge because I've not been into any other schools and any other sections, but I would think that perhaps a school system that was very limited in what they could do for the youngsters might not have children that were quite as capable at a younger age as these children seem to be.
Mm-hmm. Because you have a clear perspective.
Yeah.
You're more neutral than other people.
That's right.
That's good. The other activity, you help out with the Blind Children's Fund?
Blind Children's Fund up, Sherry Rayner heads that up, a non-profit organization, and I sometimes put in things into her computer.
Mm-hmm. And where's that?
That's up on Central, I think it's Central Street in Auburndale. It's a building that's attached to the what used to be the Auburndale Methodist Church, and she has space in that building. There's a daycare center downstairs, and then there's some social service agency on the same floor with her, and she has a fairly large space there. Of course, I think she's doing a tremendous job in what her work isn't with blind children as per se, as touching them in that, but she has developed literature and materials to help parents cope with raising blind children from birth on. Her own youngest child was born without eyes. And so at that time, she's now graduating from Michigan State College, I believe, right now, this week, yeah. And so she's in her early 22 or 23. Mm-hmm. And as Sherry said, there was absolutely nothing available that could help her cope with a blind child.
A youngster at home. Yeah. Not everybody could come over here to
No. Yeah. And so that she set about then developing different things, because a blind baby has to be stimulated. Mm-hmm. A blind baby, if you don't stimulate it physically, it will just lie there and not ever do anything, mm-hmm. because it can't see, nothing mm-hmm. to attract its attention. Mm-hmm. So you have to do things with the blind baby from very early on. Mm-hmm. And so she has developed all this material. She has a book up there that's got swatches of material in it, and a child can feel it mm-hmm. and know what velvet feels like, mm-hmm. what fur feels like, and cotton feels like.
These very elemental things.
Yes, they're very elemental, but they're very, very important. And she travels all over everywhere giving lectures on this, and it's amazing. They're having a symposium in Scotland this summer, and at which time people from all parts of the world will be represented, and almost every country has some sort of a blind service organization. Mm-hmm. And because I've done up the addresses for some of these people, mm-hmm. and almost every country will be represented there. And So it's a worldwide thing, and it's something that countries are beginning to realize that it's because they're predicting more blind children in the future because of certain things that have happened with drugs and other things. But so I enjoy do that, and she just depends on a lot of volunteer aides to help her do mailings and things like that, because they say it's a non-profit organization and she depends on contributions to keep it going.
It's amazing if the inquiring person, what you can find to do with
Anybody that's retired and says don't want to retire because they don't know what to do with themselves, they really are not looking very far ahead, because of the RSVP has all kinds of things listed in their newsletter about volunteer workers, and there are places that are looking for people to do part-time work, and I really can't see any retired person, unless their health is a deterrent, not really finding lots to do to keep them busy. In fact, I've got too much to do sometimes. I just wish for a day off now and again. But I really wouldn't change it. If I had to stay home all the time and just do housework and watch TV, I'd be the most bored person in this whole world.
Everybody who receives your help, I know, are very, very grateful because you take the obligation very seriously. Thank you. How about your grandmother?
This is way back. I don't remember it because it was during World War I, and she put the flag out in a hurry. I guess it was either a Flag Day or 4th of July. Anyway, put it out upside down.
Which is a distress signal.
It's a distress signal. Well, this very proper lady from Charles Bank Road came flying up the street and banged on the door. I'm going to have you arrested for treason. You have the flag out upside down.
When you said neighbors really kept an eye on each other.
They certainly did. It was another thing that used to amuse me no end, too. The Monday morning's wash was a big race between 3 other ladies and my grandmother to see who was going to get their wash out on the line first, and whose wash was the whitest.
And was that some kind of help in the way of a clothes washer, or was that by
No, that was probably by hand with the old-fashioned tub with the old-fashioned wringers. And it was before the washing machines came into,
general use.
General use.
Oh,
but
it's amazing how
I
these
don't
things
know whether
stick out.
they were more contented in those days or not. But they didn't have all the outside activities to get involved with. I really can't tell. Remember, my grandmother always seemed very, well-contented person. She liked to read, and so was her theory in life was you get all your work done in the morning. An hour in the morning is worth 2 in the afternoon was one of her favorite sayings. And so her afternoons were change her dress and get herself dressed up for the afternoon, and embroider or crochet or weave, and then it would be time to start dinner. So I don't know whether she ever had any. I don't think women then probably, if they did feel there was something else, they were rare.
Yeah.
They were rare. I think most women were pretty acceptable of that kind of life, and that's what they were, life was to be for them. I always felt that my grandmother, Mr. Calling, I think she would have made a very fine woman executive, because she knew how to, get things going and organize and things like that.
Yeah, but she didn't have to be, because
No,
on
she
a certain
didn't.
economic level,
Yeah.
her needs were satisfied.
That's right, yeah.
And then she drew her pleasures from the family.
That's true.
But I don't know, I wish we had the luxury.
That's true, yeah. That's true.
Not everybody in the 1980s.
No,
Very
can
few of us.
do that. Yeah, can do that. That's true. And then when I was, because my mother and I lived with my grandparents, and when I got into my teens, And my grandfather was a salesman. He did a lot of traveling, day traveling. She would go with him on these day trips, take her crocheting with her and embroidery, and if it was an area where there was shops or stores, then she'd get out and go and poke around all the shops and stores. If not, she'd just sit in the car and work on the work and wait for him, and that was
Great,
yeah.
great. You know, and she wasn't needed as much as
No, she wasn't needed as much as one.
Great. Well, thank you again.